Hello and welcome to News Central TV. I'm Darshan Usman, and here are stories making headlines beyond the continent. Let's begin by telling you that hundreds of supporters of Israel in Gaza faced off at a Sydney University Friday, bringing echoes of U.S. college protests and Middle East tumult to a campus and continent on the other side of the world. Now, rival demonstrators came eye to eye, shouting slogans and waving flags. Still, except for a few heated exchanges, the protests and counter-protests passed off peacefully. But it was another sign that the war in Gaza, approaching its seventh month, and the long rumbling U.S. culture wars are roiling politics oceans away. Now, pro-Palestinian demonstrators have been camped for 10 days on a green lawn in front of the University of Sydney's sprawling Gothic sandstone edifice, a bastion of Australian academia.
I don't think that this movement makes Jews unsafe. I, as a Jew, do not feel unsafe marching in rallies or hanging out here. I think that making us feel unsafe is part of Israel's agenda. It's not a reflection of the reality on the ground.
For us, Colombia was first an inspiration and then a warning. An inspiration for us to set up our own camp, for us to continue to build our movement on this university, to demand our university's own divestment from Israel and cutting ties with Israeli genocide. But also now a warning that the government is willing to use quite lethal, brutal force in order to put down Palestinian protesters.
Seeing what's happening in the US and those Ivy Leagues and seeing what's starting here, I just don't want to see this evolving into something like that. Because as long as it's legal and as long as it's within the law, I have nothing against it. There is free speech in Australia. Again, that's what we're doing here. So I wouldn't go and aggressively just, remove the whole thing, but I don't want it to get out of hand.
Absolutely uphold everyone's right to protest. That is completely okay. But what is not okay is fear, intimidation, students making others feel unsafe to be at a campus, to have their right to education that every single person here has a right to. And if we continue down this path, if we don't stand up to it now, then unfortunately we're just going to spiral out of control, as we have seen in America and France and many other countries around the world.
For more on this, I'm joined by our international correspondent, Afia Hagen. Hi, Afia. Now, the protests started on U.S. campuses. What is the situation there now?
Yes, now these particular protests actually have been rumbling quietly since the start of the Israel-Gaza conflict, which was inspired, I guess, by those attacks on October 7th. And remember, protest movements at universities all across the world are not new. During the times of apartheid, there was plenty of protest movements in universities across the world. But this particular protest movement has definitely gathered.
I will try to reconnect with Afia. But in the meantime, police on Friday entered the Sciences Po University in Paris to remove dozens of students staging a pro-Gaza sit-in the entrance hall as protests fire political debate about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Now, one student who identified himself as a representative of the Palestinian Committee, named Hitcham, said university authorities had given the group 20 minutes to leave before the forcible evacuation because of exams to be held from Monday. Bastian said he and other protesters had been peacefully brought out in groups of 10 by officers. But another student, Lucas, walking towards a master's degree, said some were dragged and others gripped by the head or shoulders. Administrators had closed Sciences Po's main buildings on Friday in response to the sit-in.
Mais on regrette vraiment l'intervention de la police une nouvelle fois, plus d'une semaine après la première fois, chose qui a embrassé l'ensemble de la communauté professorale qui était profondément choquée de cette entrée de la police à Sciences Po, de l'entrée de la police dans une institution universitaire, à la Sorbonne aussi, et encore une fois une ligne rouge a été franchie. La revendication elle est encore la même, la grève de la faim elle continue, il y a de plus en plus de gens qui la rejoignent et sur les campus de Paris et de région. Dans d'autres facs, il y a des gens qui vont commencer des grèves de la faim également. Et on n'arrêtera pas tant qu'il y a des comités d'investigation ne soient pas faits pour que les partenariats universitaires avec l'État d'Israël, les universités israéliennes, ne soient pas coupés puisqu'ils participent activement à un risque de génocide et à des violations de droits humains. Et encore une fois, ce n'est pas couper des partenariats avec un passeport ou avec un pays, c'est avec des institutions qui sont...
It's good to have you back, Afia. All right,
Can you hear
Afia,
me?
why
You can
has
hear
the
me.
police response been criticized at these protests?
Yes, the police response is said to be quite heavy-handed at these protests. Now, the NYPD confirmed that they did fire a gun at one of the protests at Columbia University. Nobody was hurt in that particular incident, and the bullet was actually found in the side of a building, and no one was injured. But the matter is being investigated. Police arrested 112 people at the Manhattan campus of NYU earlier on this week. And universities have said that the police have been very rough-handed, very heavy-handed with protesters at those encampments. And lots of protesters have been detained for a number of things, from affray to burglary to criminal mischief. And so the thinking is that the police have been quite heavy-handed with protesters, unnecessarily so, and that has not been appreciated.
All right, what has President Biden said about the protests?
Now, President Biden has insisted that protesters must uphold the rule of law. He said, and I quote, "We are a civil society and order must prevail." He said that on Thursday at the White House. And those were actually his first direct remarks about the demonstrations. We'd heard from his spokespeople before, saying that he condemned any demonstrations that had any anti-Jewish or anti-Semitic sentiment to them. But those first remarks are the ones that he has made yesterday at the White House about the protest.
All right. Well, thank you, Afia, for that. Now we'll move ahead. Let's also tell you that dozens of students have set up camp at the National Autonomous University of Mexico in solidarity with Palestinians and against Israel's war with Hamas in Gaza. The protest comes amid weeks of turmoil, clashes with police, and mass arrests at students' protests on college campuses in the United States.
Para apoyar, ¿no?, a Palestina, a la gente que está en Palestina, a los campamentos de Estados Unidos.
Creo que también es en apoyo a nuestros hermanos que están reprimiendo con violencia en Francia, en Alemania, en Estados Unidos, en más de 60 universidades en Estados Unidos. Pues justo lo que se busca es hacer como un efecto dominó.
Intentar parar el genocidio, parar de ver todos estos videos terroríficos que veo todos los días sobre mi celular, uniéndome aquí a este movimiento para exigir con una voz más robusta que se rompan relaciones con el Estado.
The World Health Organization says the availability of food in the Gaza Strip has very slightly improved, though the risk of famine in the besieged territory remains. The organization made this known during a press conference in Geneva. Ahmed Dahir, the WHO's Gaza sub-office team lead, said that previously thousands of people had been rushing at WHO trucks heading to northern Gaza, which has been most at risk of famine, in the hope of finding food. He, however, said it has changed in the last few weeks. Dahir said the food situation remained fragile in Gaza, while the population also lacks the cash to pay for food in the markets.
Importantly, the hundreds of thousands of people who are there would be at imminent risk of death if there is an assault. So we are looking at, if this happens, both what the emergency relief coordinator has warned about could be a slaughter of civilians, but also at the same time an incredible blow to the humanitarian operation in the entire strip, because it is run primarily out of Rafah.
Food situation has a little bit improved. There's a bit more food, there's more diverse food, etc. People tell us this as well. What I observed over the time, looking back in December, January, February, and now, definitely there is more basic food, more wheat, but also a little bit more diversified food on the market, not just in the south.
Yemen's Houthi rebels have threatened to attack all ships heading for Israeli ports within range. Their military spokesman, Yahya Sari, made this known during a demonstration in support of the Palestinians in the capital, Sana'a. Sari said the Yemeni armed forces announced the launch of the fourth phase of the operations, which include targeting all ships that violate the Israeli decision to ban shipping that are heading towards the ports of occupied Palestine from the Mediterranean Sea in any area that can be reached.
بدأ تنفيذ المرحلة الرابعة من التصعيد وعلى النحو التالي. أولاً استهداف كافة السفن المخترقة لقرار حظر الملاحة الإسرائيلية والمتجهة إلى موانئ فلسطين المحتلة في البحر الأبيض المتوسط في أي منطقة تطالها أيدينا. ثانياً يبدأ تنفيذ هذا من ساعة إعلان هذا البيان. ثالثاً في حال اتجه العدو الإسرائيلي إلى شن عملية عسكرية عدوانية على رفح فإن القوات المسلحة اليمنية ستقوم بفرض عقوبات شاملة على جميع سفن الشركات التي لها علاقة بالإمداد والدخول للموانئ الفلسطينية المحتلة.
Beyond the Continent continues after the break. Stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. Now, former U.S. President Donald Trump says his team plans to file a lawsuit challenging the constitutionality of the judge's gag order as he arrives at the New York court. Trump is accused of falsifying business records to reimburse his lawyer, Michael Cohen, for a $130,000 payment to adult film star Stormy Daniels just days ahead of the 2016 election against Hillary Clinton. Now, prosecutors this week urged Judge Juan Merchan to fine Trump for more violations of a gag order he imposed to protect trial participants. Merchan, who threatened Trump with jail time on Tuesday for further gag order violations, heard arguments from both sides.
Talking about people and responding when they say things about me. We have people saying things about me and I'm not allowed to respond. So this judge has taken away my constitutional right. And as the Republican candidate and somebody that's leading Biden by a lot, I should be able to respond. But this guy's got me with the gag order. Now we're filing, I think today, a constitutional motion to get this out. We'll be filing a lawsuit on the constitutionality of it. They must have 20 different DAs and assistant DAs in that room over the last couple of days over nothing, over no crime. Everyone says there was no crime. Everything was legal. And they're doing this because it's for politics. They want to get Biden elected. That's the only reason. The judge is highly conflicted. He should not be allowed to be the judge of this case. He's trying to make it a salacious.
Brazil's President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva has confirmed that the floods in southern state of Rio Grande do Sul left 35 people dead and 74 missing. Lula, who has blamed the torrent on climate change, arrived in the town of Santa Maria in the morning with a delegation of ministers and held a working meeting with Governor Eduardo Leite and other officials to coordinate rescue efforts. Central authorities has already made available 12 aircrafts, 45 vehicles and 12 boats, as well as 626 soldiers to help clear roads, distribute food, water and mattresses, and set up shelters. As the rains continued, forecasts warned the state's main Guaíba River, which has already overflowed its banks in some areas, would reach an extraordinary level of 3 meters, that's approximately 9.8 feet, by Thursday and 4 meters the next day.
Daqui transmitir aos familiares a nossa solidariedade, ao povo gaúcho a nossa solidariedade e voltar a afirmar ao governador do estado que o governo brasileiro, o governo federal e seus 37 ministros estaremos à disposição para tentar ajudar o estado do Rio Grande do Sul. Por isso, nunca antes na história do Brasil tinha havido uma quantidade de chuva num único local. Já são 235 municípios que estão afetados pela corrente da água e pela chuva. Metade do estado. Já tem 35 óbitos, 74 pessoas desaparecidas.
Britain's Conservative Prime Minister Rishi Sunak says it is disappointing as Labour Party makes significant gains in local by-elections with more results still to come. On a visit to a passing out parade of parachute regiment troops at a military base in northern England, Sunak says he remains focused completely on the job at hand despite the results of his party. Labour, out of power since 2010, enthroned by Boris Johnson's Tories at the last general elections in 2019, won the constituency with a 26% swing, the third largest margin from the Tories to Labour by a by-election since World War II. The win came as early results showed Labour were inflicting heavy losses on the Conservatives in local contests that took place across England on Thursday.
Well, obviously it's disappointing to lose good, hard-working Conservative councillors, and I'm grateful to them for all their service in local government, keeping council tax low and delivering services for local people. But we've still got lots of results to come as well. And there are also things that I would point to. Harlow, for example, where Keir Starmer held a rally just on Wednesday saying that was a place that he had to win to be on track to win a general election. That hasn't happened, and indeed we're still waiting for the result in the Tees Valley mayoralty just near to here, which is obviously a very important test as well. Ground. I'm focused completely on the job at hand. That's delivering for people across the country. If you just look at what we're doing in the last week or so alone, a £900 tax cut hitting people's payslips, the first failed asylum seeker off to Rwanda. At the same time, what have Labour said? Well, they said that they are going to scrap the Rwanda scheme and, as far as I can tell, offer an amnesty to illegal migrants. That's no way to solve that problem, which is important to people right up and down the country. Well, last week I announced a historic increase in our defence spending to 2.5% of GDP because I believe as Prime Minister that's necessary to keep our country safe from the increasing threats that we face. And today I'll be speaking at a passing out parade and paying tribute and congratulating some of our brave armed forces personnel. Well, obviously I haven't seen the judgment, so I can't comment on that in detail. But with regard to net zero in general, what I would say is I'm proud of our track record. We've decarbonised faster than any other major economy around the world, cutting carbon emissions by 50%. But last year I set out a more pragmatic approach to get to net zero. Of course we believe in it, I want to get there, but we're going to do that in a way that doesn't saddle families with bills that we don't need to.
The news returns after the break. China launched a probe on Friday to collect samples from the far side of the moon, a world first as the Beijing pushes ahead with an ambitious program that aims to send a crewed lunar mission by 2030. A rocket carrying the Chang'e 6 lunar probe blasted off from the Wenchang Space Launch Center in southern China's Hainan province just before 5:30 p.m. Heavy rain engulfed the site just minutes before the launch began, they said, with hundreds of onlookers gathered nearby to witness the latest leap of China's decades-long space program. Washington has warned that the program is being used to mask military objectives and an effort to establish dominance in space. The defense ministers of the U.S., Australia, Japan and Philippines have held a joint news conference in Honolulu, Hawaii, over a water cannon incident involving China that damaged 2 Philippine vessels during a patrol in the South China Sea. Now, U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said behavior that leads to the injury of Filipino crew and damaged vessels in the South China Sea was irresponsible and disregards international law. And that's all on Beyond the Continent. Send your eyewitness report to the WhatsApp number on the screen. Do follow us on social media. We are at News Central TV. You can watch News Central live on DSTV channel 422, Star Times Channel 274, Apple TV and YouTube. Many thanks for watching. I'm Darshan Usman.